The superhuman twins Samaritan and Nemesis grew up in Granite City amid persecution and terror. The locals viewed their exceptional powers with distrust and fear, even if they were a blessing. The twins' childhood home was destroyed by fire, started by the very people they were trying to save and fight for. Their parents were victims of the fear in the neighborhood. They died in the fire. Despite the pain from that terrible night scarring their lives for eternity, Samaritan and Nemesis miraculously managed to escape. The twins' subsequent paths took a sharp turn away from one another. While Nemesis was possessed by a vicious thirst for vengeance, Samaritan accepted his gifts and used them to become a light of justice and hope for Granite City. Their early experiences had molded their fates, making them into complete opposites, one a villain, the other a hero. As Samaritan grew older, Granite City looked up to him as a towering symbol of inspiration and optimism. His unwavering resolve to rise beyond the tragedies of his life was demonstrated by his unselfish commitment to defending the city. Compared to his twin brother Nemesis, who had been driven by an unquenchable need for revenge, his acts were in sharp contrast. Nemesis developed into a powerful supervillain because of his desire to see everyone suffer same fate as their parents. With a hate-filled heart, he wanted to cause innocent people agony and suffering. Because of his fixation with his sibling, Nemesis created a magical sledgehammer out of his own hate and malice. With this weapon, which could do so much damage, he had a big advantage over the Samaritan. But there was a dreadful secret about the hammer: it could hurt both brothers equally. In the pivotal encounter at the city's power plant, Nemesis tricked Samaritan into falling into a trap. The brothers engaged in a fierce struggle, pushing one another to the brink. When the two superhumans faced off, the future of the entire city was at stake. Finally, the power plant blew up, engulfing Nemesis and Samaritan in flames. The two brothers' fate was still unknown as the city was engulfed in darkness. The city was rocked by the news of Samaritan's presumed death. While some lamented the passing of their cherished hero, others clung to the hope that he may still be alive. Theories and rumors proliferated, stoking conjecture over his potential survival. Samaritan's legacy endured despite the catastrophe, encouraging upcoming generations to struggle for justice and hope. 25 years later, Granite City was still dealing with the fallout from the horrific events that took Samaritan and Nemesis's lives. 13-year-old boy Sam Cleary was thrust into a dire predicament as he struggled to provide for his mother Tiffany. Sam grudgingly took a job with a local gang headed by the affable but vicious Reza when they were threatened with being kicked out of their apartment. Reza's gang had a scheme to divert the attention of a convenience store owner in order to steal boxes of priceless lottery tickets. The strategy failed, though, when it was discovered that the boxes contained nothing but chip packets. Reza attempted to place the fault on Sam, quickly trying to assign blame. However, Sam's cleverness impressed Cyrus, the genuine gang leader, who personally gave him a large payment. Sam had some cartoon books in his bag, and Cyrus saw the child was a big fan of the comic book character. In his view of the twins' legacy, he argued that Nemesis had battled for the poor and Samaritan had mostly protected the wealthy. When Cyrus exposed his evil schemes, he assembled a group of devoted supporters, including Farshad, Tuna, and Syl, to gather large amounts of ammo for an unidentified reason. Driven by bitterness and rage, Reza organized his group to assault Sam in retaliation. That is, until Joe Smith, a fairly unremarkable garbage collector who lived in an apartment opposite from Sam's, intervened and stopped the gang's attack. Sam was taken aback and confused by Joe's sudden, superhuman power as he slaughtered the gang members with ease. Sam was intrigued by Joe's exceptional skills and thought he might be the fabled Good Samaritan. He confided in veteran reporter Albert Kassler, who had devoted 2 decades of his career to the twins' narrative, about his worries. Knowing everything there was to know about the story of the Samaritan and Nemesis, Albert disclosed that Nemesis had a deep-seated animosity against his brother Samaritan and was motivated to bring Mayhem to the city. In the end, Nemesis's own destructive tendencies had brought him to ruin. Albert was still doubtful about Joe's identity even after Sam presented him with strong evidence. Albert did not think Joe was the fabled superhero, Despite recognizing his amazing power and the unexplained scars on his back that could only have been caused by Nemesis's sledgehammer, Cyrus had set out on his own dark mission, while Sam and Albert were looking into the enigmatic Joe Smith. He found the enormously destructive weapon used by Nemesis, a strong sledgehammer, at a nearby police station. Taking advantage of the chance, Cyrus transformed himself into the terrible new Nemesis, a personification of chaos and devastation. With the legendary weapon in his possession, Cyrus unleashed a reign of terror upon Granite City. His actions ignited riots and widespread panic, as he used EMP grenades to disrupt the city's infrastructure, plunging it into darkness and chaos. The city, already reeling from the loss of Samaritan, was now faced with a new threat, a villainous force determined to sow discord and suffering. Delving further into the mystery surrounding Joe Smith, Sam came face to face with Joe and demanded to know if, in fact, he was the fabled Good Samaritan. Joe fiercely refuted the charge while upholding his facade as an everyday man. But in a frantic attempt to hurt Joe, Reza, still seeking retribution for his earlier loss, hit Joe with his car. Despite the brutal attack, Joe's incredible resilience allowed him to heal before Sam's very eyes. His body, however, emitted an intense heat, forcing him to cool down by taking a cold shower and consuming large amounts of ice cream. Joe revealed that his extraordinary abilities were the result of binary fission cellular thermodynamics, a process that generated immense heat and energy. He explained that if he failed to regulate his body temperature, his heart could explode, leading to a catastrophic outcome. Despite the initial shock and disbelief, Sam and Joe developed an unlikely friendship, bonded by their shared experiences and mutual respect. Meanwhile, Cyrus, impressed by Sam's resourcefulness, offered him a position within his gang. However, Sam's initial enthusiasm quickly waned as he witnessed the gang's violent activities firsthand. The brutality and cruelty he observed deeply disturbed him, raising doubts about his decision to join Cyrus's cause. Shockwaves went through the city after Joe's bravery in saving a young girl from a terrible explosion triggered by Cyrus's group. In an attempt to make the incident seem more dramatic, the media declared that Samaritan had returned, endangering Cyrus's objectives. Reza discovered the truth about Joe's identity and his relationship to Sam, and he recognized Joe as the guy he had thought he had killed with his automobile. Inspired by a need for vengeance, Farshad rallied his troops to assault Joe with the intention of exacting revenge for their slain colleague. But Joe's greater strength and skill set proved to be an impassable barrier. His incredible strength was on full display as he easily overpowered Farshad and his comrades. Witnesses recorded the altercation on camera, and the media swiftly disseminated the video, strengthening the case that Samaritan had definitely made a comeback. Faced with the growing media attention and the increasing danger to himself and his loved ones, Joe decided to leave the city. He knew that his presence would only attract more trouble and put those he cared about at risk. Sam, deeply concerned about Cyrus's sinister plans, warned Joe that the villain was likely targeting the city's power stations, perhaps with the same destructive intent that Nemesis had once possessed. However, Joe, despite his unwavering sense of justice, refused to get involved. He believed that his departure was the best way to protect the city from further harm. As Joe prepared to leave Granite City, he carried with him the weight of his secret identity and the knowledge that his city was still in grave danger. The gang, having discovered Joe's apartment empty, resorted to a desperate plan to lure him back. They kidnapped Sam and his mother, Tiffany, holding them captive at their headquarters as bait. Tiffany, terrified for her son's safety, delivered the message to Joe, who, upon hearing the news, rushed to their aid. Joe, fueled by a burning determination to rescue Sam and his mother, stormed the gang's headquarters. With exceptional skill and strength, he systematically eliminated the gang members, clearing a path to confront the mastermind behind the kidnapping. Cyrus, now adorned in the iconic Nemesis costume and wielding the powerful sledgehammer, awaited Joe's arrival. Joe was significantly inferior to Cyrus because of his debilitated state following the intense combat with the gang, despite his considerable powers. Rejoicing in his newfound might, Cyrus made fun of Joe's heroic ambitions and claimed the role of Nemesis for himself. But as the conflict dragged on, Joe disclosed a startling fact. Joe, was the real Nemesis, and Samaritan had actually perished in the power plant fire. Years ago, after surviving the devastating explosion, Nemesis had renounced his villainous path, leaving behind his obsession with revenge. He had shed his old identity and embraced a life of redemption, becoming the seemingly ordinary Joe Smith. The revelation stunned Cyrus, who had been consumed by his own thirst for power and destruction. A flashback revealed the climactic confrontation between Samaritan and Nemesis during the power plant explosion. Samaritan, having gained the upper hand, had the opportunity to deliver a fatal blow to his brother. However, despite their bitter rivalry, Samaritan refused to kill Nemesis, instead tossing the powerful sledgehammer away. He still saw his twin as a brother, even if their paths had diverged so dramatically. Unfortunately, the building's roof collapsed, trapping Samaritan precariously above the raging flames. Nemesis, despite his change of heart, was unable to save his brother. In a moment of despair, he tossed both their masks into the same fire that had engulfed Samaritan. Joe, having destroyed the sledgehammer, confronted Cyrus, who was now a crazed and dangerous figure. In a final act of retribution, Joe knocked Cyrus into a burning abyss, mirroring the tragic fate of Samaritan. However, the intense heat and the spreading flames nearly overwhelmed Joe, threatening to consume him with his own healing abilities. Sam, realizing the danger his friend was in, broke open a nearby pipe, showering Joe with a deluge of water. The cold water helped to regulate Joe's body temperature, allowing him to recover enough to escape the burning building. Together, Joe and Sam jumped out of a window, their lives hanging in the balance. As Sam and Joe escaped the burning building, Sam couldn't help but question Joe's true identity. Joe, finally revealing the truth, admitted that he was indeed Nemesis. He confessed that he had been consumed by guilt and remorse for his past atrocities, believing that Samaritan's death was directly his fault. The weight of his guilt had haunted him for years, preventing him from moving on. Joe emphasized that every individual, regardless of their actions, possessed both good and evil within them. He urged Sam to make the right choices in life, to learn from the mistakes of the past and strive for a better future. As the police arrived to arrest Reza and the remaining members of Cyrus's gang, Joe slipped away unnoticed. Joe happened to overhear Sam's press interview and heard the little child declare that Samaritan had saved his life. With the weight of his newfound freedom and the ghosts of his past haunting him, Joe's future remained uncertain as he considered the road he would pursue. As the dust settles over Granite City, the legend of the Samaritan is no longer a distant memory but a living truth. In the heart of the city, where despair once reigned, hope has been rekindled by the unexpected hero. Sam Cleary has seen firsthand the power of redemption, and he knows now that heroes aren't defined by their past but by the choices they make in the present. Mr. Joe, the man who once walked in the shadow of his own guilt, has proven that anyone can rise again, even from the ashes of their darkest days. The Samaritan may not have been the hero the city remembered, but he was the one it needed, imperfect, scarred, and, most importantly, real. And as long as there is a flicker of hope, the spirit of the Samaritan will live on, inspiring those who dare to stand up against the darkness.